And that's the thing that for me, the big driving factor is I focus on what I call the baby steps. I focus on the 1% better, just because it's so small. It's not asking a whole lot either. If you're 1% better than you were yesterday, but over time that extrapolates. And a really, really good way to measure that for me is I just think about 6 months prior. I think about that meeting I had 6 months prior, and I'm like, oh man, why didn't I say that then? I probably could have helped them out a little bit more. I probably could have solved that problem for them a little quicker.
Yeah.
But that also validates that I am getting better.
Hey everyone, my name is Ethan DeLeon, and I'm here with our founder and CEO of Small Nation, Jason Duff. Joining us on the show today is facility sales rep from Cintas, Curt Wisecup. We want to welcome you to the Small Nation podcast, where we share some of the valuable lessons with what we have learned about entrepreneurship, real estate, economic development, and more. The point of this podcast is to create value for you, the listener, and to create a space to learn, talk about what's trending, and inspire others.
Thanks, Ethan. Curt, welcome to the show today.
Excited to be here. Excited to have a little chat with you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So here's what I really respect about Curt. You're going to hear more about his journey today, but behind the scenes of a lot of our small businesses are some big businesses. We've really not had that perspective on the show. And I think hearing the journey of what are all the things when you walk into a business that you just expect. And sometimes that is the way that someone greets you. Sometimes that is the music that's playing in the establishment. Could be the lighting. Well, something else that's really important to a lot of people is how things are clean or not clean. And you kind of wonder, how does all this stuff happen? Well, there are companies that provide outsourced services to help small businesses be their best. And getting to know Curt and understanding more about all the different products and services that companies like Cintas offer, I was amazed at how many different businesses he's touching in our community, and not just in this region, but in other regions. And I want to hear your perspective. How did you get started in all of this?
Well, I've been with Cintas for 10 years. So it's been a journey, and it's been a great journey, but I do have to go back before that, how I led into Cintas, because it was kind of unique for me. I graduated from Wright State, and with business degree, I was at Sinclair prior. I had the opportunity to play golf for Sinclair and got an associate's in communications, and I got an exercise certificate in science. I'm sorry, not science, exercise science. So I'm really big into physical fitness. It's kind of one of the things that it's like I have to every day, but it's also because, I want to be around for a while, and I want to also lead a very, very healthy lifestyle. Good example for the kids. But
I was just out of Napa, and does drinking bottles of wine and glasses of wine count as... did you study that at all?
A glass of wine a day is super healthy for you.
Oh, see, I like that.
Yeah.
See,
and,
that certificate's paying off.
And they sell those glasses that are the size of wine bottles. So,
see, no one's
it's
counting
all
the
about
measuring.
perspective.
Okay, good. Just want to check.
But yeah, so I got my degree at Wright State, and during my my college tenure, I actually worked at Kettering Health Network, and I always made the joke is I worked at a college I worked at a hospital while my friends waited tables. So yeah, and during that I was able to kind of get the perspective of some sales with medical device sales reps. And after college, I actually got a job working for a medical device sales company. I did that for about 2 years. I enjoyed it. It was fun, but it just wasn't my passion. Like I just wasn't into it. One of the things that I utilize a lot of is you always have to be 2 feet into whatever you do. And I got that actually from one of our training directors at Cintas. But the thing is, I look back on that, and for me, looking back, I wasn't in it. So I walked away from that. I told my wife, I said, I'm passionate about fitness and I like helping people. So I looked at going back to school for physical therapy, and had all the prereqs, had to take a few more classes, and talked with my wife and said, yeah, I think I'm going to do this. And so then I had about 6 months or so till the classes were going to start. And I said, you know what? I don't really feel like going into a mountain of college debt again. So
yeah.
So I decided to clean up my resume and throw it on monster.com to really date myself. And I wasn't actively looking. I just put it on there, said maybe somebody reaches out to me. And lo and behold, the general manager, a gentleman named Eric Cabine, reached out to me from the Cintas location in Vandalia, Ohio. Location 02, Dayton North is what we call it. And he called me and said, hey, saw your resume. I'd love for you to come in and talk about working at Cintas. And I'm like, what's Cintas? And he goes, oh, you've probably seen our trucks driving around. I said, I can't say that I have, but you know, when you're not looking for something, it's hard.
Is
to
it
find.
A software company?
Exactly. Yeah. I had no idea. So he kind of told me over the phone, industrial laundry. I did some research online, went in, had a 2-hour conversation with him. And it wasn't an interview. It was just talking about the positions and everything that you do and all the things you can do. And it felt weird because I was like, all right, there's something to this. But the big thing for me that really drew me in was what Cintas calls as culture. It's just an overabundance of positivity. As I walked through that plant and I saw people hanging garments on, hangers all day, and I saw people unloading trucks. That's not a glamorous job. It's dirty. There's some grit that you have to have. But everybody was happy. Everybody was having a good time. Got to go on a route ride with a gentleman before I even started the interview process. And same thing, like this guy is walking in and talking to all these people, all these customers. Everybody loved him. He loved everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, all right, this looks like fun. And I got hired on as a service sales rep, which is a route driver for Cintas. And I absolutely loved it. Probably to this day, I can say probably one of my favorite positions because it was perfect. You're outside, you're in nature. There's not really that many hot days and cold days in Ohio when it comes down to it. Tons of people you're getting to talk to. I'm happy to see them. They're happy to see me. I'm providing solutions. If they need more uniforms for a new employee, I'm taking care of those uniforms. If they need another mat for an entryway, I'll get them that mat. So it was great. And then from there, it's just it was kind of the snowball effect, as I called it. I started, I did really great as a service sales rep. I was one of the top reps, and then I was promoted to a service supervisor, where I saw a team of drivers. I would handle routing, which is just figuring out where we're going to put new customers, and handle interviews, and did great at that role. Loved it. A harder position in Cintas, but the thing that I've learned about it is each position I've gotten into is I was able to take the knowledge from the prior position and be the best you could be at that current one. So after service supervisor, I became a catalog manager, where I handled things like logoed garments and supplying PPE to customers like gloves, hairnets for food processing. And then after that, I moved to a service manager role, where I oversaw a team of drivers and a service supervisor. And was very successful in that role from the standpoint of being what we call peak. So I was a top-level performer at that, and achieved OAA, Outstanding Achievement Award, for the location while I was in that role. And then I went on a field ride with the sales manager, 402 at the time. Her name was Kay Owens, and she was like, hey, let's go. And I said, we rode around. She's like, what do you know? I'm like, let's go to a few spots. And I'm walking into customers and doing some cold calls with her. And as I'm walking into these cold calls, which isn't something that I would do as a service manager, I'm walking in to meet current customers. I'm talking to them about, Joel over at Joel's Stamping or whatever, saying like, hey, he uses Cintas over there. And she's like, have you ever thought about going into the sales side of the business? And I was kind of like, yeah, I can do that. That sounds fun. So I kind of make a joke sometimes as I know there's a plan for the people that are putting me in the positions, but I say that I'm on a raft floating down a river. And I like that. I just dock up wherever they need me to.
Yeah.
You say that, but I think some of these things have been, purposeful.
Yeah,
would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, I respect that you're the guy today that worked in the route where you're selling those services, but you understand what is required behind the scenes to perform.
Yeah. And that's the big thing too, is, Cintas is nothing short of a buffet of services. Like a customer would get overwhelmed if I walked in and just said like, here's all the things we can do, and you throw out a list, and they're just like, whoa. So that's why I kind of look at myself more as just a consultant. Like I like to come in, I like to talk with the business over, figure out what their needs are, and then work with them on that and what's going to make the most sense for their business.
So I have to admit that before knowing you and before knowing Cintas, I kind of had a perception that spending money on changing rugs was the biggest waste of money. And here's why. Like, I prided myself, like, I love to go to Sam's Club or to Costco. And part of my job for my business was to buy the cleaning supplies. Yeah. So I would scan the aisles, and of course, you see big bulk items of commercial cleaning stuff. And I was the guy filling the soap containers, and, the rugs, I could buy a $28 rug and put it out there. And I'm like, why would people pay someone to switch that out? Well, that was until I started going through a few winter cycles and understanding how do you clean a rug after it's been destroyed with salt and grime and everything else, and do it when it's negative, 5 outside. And the thing about it is, because I was being cheap and I wasn't really thinking at everything else a part of that equation, there was a lot more cost that was ruining my carpets, was ruining my floors, maybe was causing people to potentially slip and fall in my business. And that's when I started to see the value is that having someone else that's providing that service and, not even valuing my time in the process. And I think that's a lesson for a lot of small business owners. Your time is your most precious resource. And so it's evaluating what can you outsource to a trusted partner that will allow you to be doing more of what you do best. Mm-hmm. Do you run into that? I mean, is that when you're out there selling and someone says, well, my rug's just fine, I'm going to go to Sam's Club and buy a new rug. Why would I pay you to do it?
Absolutely.
What do you tell them?
It's a conversation of I think the biggest thing that I like to point out is the safety factor. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. Yeah. And it seems like something so minute because it doesn't happen until it happens. Nobody ever trips and falls on purpose. They trip and fall because there was an accident, the ice, or a torn up rug or something. And when that happens as a business owner, that's 100% on you, and you're right. Like the idea of changing a mat out, some people would look at that. It's like, why would you ever do that? And it's like, and it's also the fact that like people look at things when they walk into businesses, like if you're going to we'll just use a dental office for an example. If you walk into a dental office and it's beautiful and you walk in the door and there's a nice crisp logo mat sitting in front of you and everybody's nice and friendly, then people notice those things. If you walk into the same office,
it could even be subconscious, right? Yeah. Like there are people that their senses are tuned into that, but then there's also a subconscious perception that if I go into this restaurant and the floor is filthy, there's a good chance the kitchen is filthy too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing, like the same thing. They walk in and they see the mat that's half torn up on the floor. It doesn't matter how nice the floors look and everything. They might be like, ooh, I wonder what type of equipment they're buying for the back then, if they're not even taking care of their own. Restrooms are a big thing too. Like, I think that's probably one of the unique things that I run into in not just from being a sales representative for Cintas, but as a customer. I can tell you the last restaurant I went to and how dirty the restroom was. I couldn't even tell you how the food was, but I remember those things. Yeah. So that's a big thing is making those restrooms likable, because sometimes you can have an experience somewhere that is just great. My wife and I went to a restaurant that will remain unnamed in Vandalia, and the food was so good. It was a great experience. And then she went to the restroom and came back and said, we're never coming back here. Yeah. And I'm like, what happened? And she just said the restrooms are horrible. And like that is what we took away from that. And the fun part about that is, how many other people do you think she told? A lot. And it was a lot. Mm-hmm. And now it's like that's the viewpoint, as opposed to walking in the restaurant at, like Brew Fountain or Syndicate, and, they have the of course I'll say our Cintas dispensers on the wall, and it looks very crisp, it looks very modern, it looks very clean, it smells good because of the air fresheners. People are going to remember that, and it carries, that value carries. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something special for small business owners.
So you remember the early days when I was cheap here in Bellefontaine and wouldn't pay rugs. I mean, because in the beginning, it's what you don't know but need to know, or you learn along the way. I mean, we started renovating buildings and leasing spaces and starting restaurants and other businesses more than 10 years ago. And I think at the time, you were probably, when we were first getting started here, maybe doing routes and deliveries on the truck.
So I have a really, that's probably my favorite part about, getting to speak with everyone and getting to know everyone in Bellefontaine is the chance to like tell that story to someone. And just new business owners in general that I've been working with. Fat Boys Pizzas just down the road here. I got to tell Dwayne this story earlier and told him how I was a route driver, and on my Thursdays that was my Bellefontaine day, and I drive right up Main Street, and just nothing there. Go service Majestic Plastics. Sean Amos is the owner out there. Go there. I'd go over to Heartland Egg, come back, and there was just nothing there. And it was just like, man, it's like, service the city of Bellefontaine. I took care of the uniforms for them. And it was so much fun progressing through Cintas, as a service supervisor. And then at that time, that's around the time Brew Fountain got started. So I got to meet, Adam, and I got to get introduced to him. I was kind of behind the scenes. I wasn't as involved in that until he was probably about 3 or 4 years in. But I got to introduce myself to him. I got to meet him and watch that business flourish. And then as I was a service manager, that's when things really, from what I noticed, started to really take off, is where I started to build relationships with Adam at Brew Fountain more and more. Him and I would go play golf every now and then. I met Brittany over at 600 and got to sit down with her. And I'll be honest, the first time I met her, she wasn't happy with the services. But we were able to turn that around into a great trusted partnership. Now I work really closely with Dalton over there, and then the same thing, and it kind of just kept snowballing per se. I got to work with Matt Brown over at Iron City, where he was using a different vendor, and I got to work with him, and he got to see kind of what we're doing for other restaurants, and it's eventually switched over to us too. And then got to work with Rob over at Vicarios when he moved to his new location. He was already a Cintas customer, but when he moved to this new location, having that prior relationship, introducing myself, showing him all the things we could do, now he uses us for almost tons and tons of his facilities out there. And the cool part about it for me too is getting to utilize all these individuals as referrals. When I'm working with new customers, I can say like, hey, I work with Adam.
Can you explain what is that? Because I think in sales, some people don't know what a referral is.
Yeah. Okay. So a referral is as simple as just being able to mention a current customer who you're using, or somebody maybe you just recently got signed up with to use the services. And I'm very transparent. I'll say, hey, if you want to call him, here you go. Here's his number. We get letters too. I worked with a place in Springfield, Ohio called Mad River Vet Clinic, who was with a different vendor, and they were nice enough to write me a nice referral letter that went through in detail what we did for them to get them started,
Wow.
And of course I utilize that when I go in and walk into businesses, because let's face it, most of the time, small businesses, time is their most precious asset. So when I'm walking in asking for their most precious asset, they usually don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But if I can say, hey, I worked with Missy over at Mad River Vet. This is a referral letter. Here's my card.
It'd be a powerful sales tool.
Give me about 10 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
And that does go a long way, more so even than marketing material. I can come in with a little pamphlet that shows how cool our dispensers are.
And it goes to the trash can.
Yeah. But when they have a letter from a actual business that's similar to them in the area, it can go a really, really long way. And that's what I see. And that, like I said, that the cool part of that story is I've gotten to tell that to tons of Cintas, up and comers, management trainees who ride with me in the car, and I take them to Bellefontaine. I'm like, see all this? None of this was here. It's like, you wouldn't have known, you were in high school anyway. But it's something really cool. It's special, and it's created I feel like I've been an indirect behind the scenes, I'm definitely not responsible for the growth. That goes to you, but definitely a part of it. And it's something that I share to tons. Like I tell my family about it a lot. My mom and dad are both retired. They come up to Bellefontaine a lot. I'll be like, hey, you need to go eat at this place. You need to check out this place over here. And I do the same thing when I'm even in the Springfield market. I'm working with the new owner of a Chick-fil-A. And I told him, I said, hey, if you get a chance, you're new to the area, he's from Georgia, take a trip to Bellefontaine. And it's a cool little town. Best pizza you'll ever have is 600 downtown. And if you get a chance, get the Reuben at Brew Fountain. It's really good.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's the power. You're using what works for you and your business, and then sharing that with others. And that word of mouth marketing, that's one of the most effective ways to share great businesses, companies, services.
And it's so. I was telling you before we started, I'm a process person. I'm very I'm very organized, and having that ability to kind of plan my day that way. We call it geomapping, where like I know I'm going to be in Bellefontaine all day. I'm thinking on my way there, like, okay, which of the customers am I going to talk about? What are the services I'm going to talk about at them with this customer as I'm sitting in front of them and trying to get them to buy into, not buying a $25 mat for their front door, and we're going to come in and change it out on a weekly basis, because they have to see the value and get them to understand that, this is going to not just save them time, it's going to make the place a little safer, it's going to make it cleaner. But the perception, that's probably the biggest thing with small businesses specifically. Like, as soon as someone walks in the door, like, they want to be, they as an owner, you want them to like the place that they're walking into. Like, they want to be, and they want to leave and be able to tell that to a bunch of other people.
Yeah,
So,
the amount of detail that they put into paint colors or everything else. And even today, online presences, there's a reason they call it storefronts, and they put so much intentionality into making sure it's pristine and represents your business well.
Curt, can you speak about the mindset that it takes to get up every day? Like, you mentioned a little bit about your drive up to your clients and how you're thinking about it, but to achieve like where you've grown in the company, like what drives you? Like, what is that mindset that fuels you?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, there's one thing that I really like strive by, and it's just so simple. So I look at things very, very small, but I'm also very visionary. So it's almost like a catch-22, because I'm thinking at things like baby steps, like, okay, how can I get 1% better than I was the day prior? What's this, like, if something didn't go well while I was talking to a customer, what's the one thing I could tweak just a little bit, to make it better at the next one? And at the same time, I think to myself 2-3 months down the road, constantly thinking about, all right, what do I have? Like, things are going great right now. Yeah. Oh man, I got presentations lined up. I got customers that are excited to have our business in, I got maybe people that have called me because it snowed in November, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking 3 months down the road, like, what do I have going on then? And that's the thing that for me, the big driving factor is I focus on what I call the baby steps. I focus on the 1% better, just because it's so small. It's not asking a whole lot either. If you're 1% better than you were yesterday, but over time that extrapolates. And a really, really good way to measure that for me is I just think about 6 months prior, I think about that meeting I had 6 months prior, and I'm like, oh man, why didn't I say that then? I probably could have helped them out a little bit more. I probably could have solved that problem for them a little quicker.
Yeah.
But that also validates that I am getting better. I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll just give you a shout out. Like, we, our team member Shannon was having a billing issue, and what a lot of big companies do when you have a problem like that, it was a call the billing department. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
And
wait on hold.
Yeah. Good luck. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's another thing where you step in to say, I'm sorry you're having that problem. Let me ask some questions around that. Let me then work with the team, and I'll champion this to get this fixed. And then you fall back up and ask the question, did this get resolved? I want to hear. I think teaching people the importance of creating solutions for customers, but when a mistake happens or when there's an issue, like actually getting to the solution, there's not a lot of people and companies that do that anymore.
Yep.
They kind of say, stay on the queue and good luck.
Yep. I think that, for me, the reason is, I act with a very high sense of urgency. Like, if somebody calls me, like, all right, that's a priority right now. Like, and the reason is because there's something on the line. It's called your brand, and what's a great way to increase your brand is to become that go-to person, and that's what I like to be known as. But the flip side of that too is I want Cintas to be known as that as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about me. It's also about having this brand, not just necessarily around Bellefontaine, but my market and throughout the country, because we're a big company. We have a lot of big customers, and we want people to think, oh man, yeah, we should have Cintas. Cintas will get that taken care of. And then it goes a step further that dives down deeper and says, well, hey, call Curt, he'll get that taken care of. And that's happened before in town. I know for a fact that if Adam's having something going on, then he'll reach out directly to me, and I will get it taken care of immediately. And I think the proactiveness too is part of it. I like to reach out to customers, just checking in. Hey, how's everything going? It's going good. Oh, you know what? Actually, we need this. I'm like, all right, let me get that taken care of for you. So.
you mentioned that you know, from the first time you started coming to Bellefontaine and over the last 10 to 15 years, you've seen a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
You've seen
just a little
buildings renovated. Yeah, just a little. Buildings renovated, new businesses started. You've seen existing businesses expand and start new locations. Just like you mentioned, I think how you approach that motivation to make your professional growth and personal growth better, we're doing the same thing. And it really is, it's incremental like development and incremental changes. Like the shift of saving and revitalizing and restoring your town, a lot of people think like there's this magic wand and it just happens in a year or two. It's actually, it takes time, and it takes like looking at those little tweaks to the dial, to the marketing, to the appearance. Like there's all these different factors. But the thing that I'll just, share that it is a team of people. And I think you alluded to, like, you should take pride in that you're a supporting actor in this whole show. And I'll just share that part of what we've been building at Small Nation is a specific formula for how we can revitalize, improve, and redevelop towns. And that's called the Small Town Success Formula. Because what we found to create success, there's a unique process to do that. One is that you've got to buy and invest in historic real estate in your town. And it's those buildings that have the character, that have the great location, that have all the history. Many times those downtowns and those communities have not been activated yet. So getting in the real estate game is going to be important in your town. The next thing is that actively recruiting tenants. So you mentioned many people that were here on that early journey in year 1, 2, and 3, and they had the courage to start restaurants and to get that traffic, energy, life back in place. And then we had to get access to capital. So it was like finding business partners that then would say, hey, I'm going to, take risk on your restaurant idea. I'm going to take risk on, investing in this property with you. And that last part is really the coaching, mentorship, and support. And I think that's the pieces that we're excited about now.
Yeah.
When a new business comes into Bellefontaine, we have a whole host of services and tools and people to introduce them to.
Right.
So like when the Queen of Hearts Fine Chocolate and Gifts opened up, they called you because they want a logoed rug with their logo on that to keep their space clean and nice.
Yeah. And I mean, that was working with Sherry has been a treat. No pun intended.
She's one of a kind. We are going to invite her on the podcast at some point.
Coming soon.
I cannot wait. But that was so cool. Not just, obviously, it was just so cool to walk in there and see, because I got there before there was really anything in there. It's just like, all right, what's this going to be? Okay.
The building was pretty rough. The second and third story was condemned.
Yeah.
The whole opera block. The whole opera block has been really one of the largest and most difficult projects we've done. But now you're starting to see it's coming alive.
Yeah. And in our previous conversation, you said Cintas was beginning to notice that they're picking up business here in the small town, right? Like, tell us about that a little bit.
From our location perspective, if I were to compare a town that's similar to Bellefontaine and we'll say size, and then maybe a kind of a similar downtown, it would probably be maybe like Troy, Ohio. It's kind of similar.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's some great places down there, and Troy's beautiful. It has some, but from a Cintas footprint in Troy versus Bellefontaine, there's a little bit of obscurity. Like, we're not in as many of the businesses. And it's kind of like the why, like what is the reason behind that?
Yeah.
And, and I think that one of the biggest things is obviously the uniqueness of myself being in this market for as long as I've been. And I've been able to build relationships, build referrals. But the biggest thing is I built trust. I have trust between the business owners. And that's something that as a company, from our perspective, we're trying to figure out, how can we get relationships like this with other real estate developers, other companies that are kind of doing what you guys are doing in different towns and things. And how can we gain that trust and get that relationship and everything? And I think that would spur, obviously some more businesses for Cintas. And at the same time, it's going to create quite a bit of trust between business owners in the area. And that's been something that, I do take, like I said, I take a lot of pride for it. It's become personal for me in a strange way over the past years that I've been, because it's just been so cool, for lack of better phrasing, to see it all develop and kind of think to myself in the back of my head, like knowing like, oh, cool, I was able to help them out with something. I was able to get Sherry a logo mat, and she needed it when she was opening, and I had a week to get it.
100%. And I love your perspective, because a lot of times we highlight small businesses and entrepreneurs, who have their own storefronts, but you have that attitude in the job that you're working now, for a larger brand, and it's still making an impact. And I think, sometimes I think it's, I want to highlight both, because we need both. And, on this like idea that a rising tide raises all ships, right? Like we're obviously trying to develop and, renovate our historic buildings and make all this possible, but the impact it's having for Cintas, as a business, the impact it's having on you, like as well, like personally, it's your brand, right? It makes you look good as well. Like, it takes everybody.
How do you maintain, like you're growing? How do you personally maintain that same level, but also want to put more on your plate?
Well, I mean, for me, like I guess for lack of better phrasing or for an easy way to say it, my job is to, get storefronts. Like that's what you got to do, and I think the big thing for me is, and I said this earlier about being 2 feet in, and I kind of picked that up from our sales training director.
I like that. That's a good feeling. Yeah.
If you're 2 feet in, which basically just means you're in it, then you're going to figure it out. Like, I think if I were to give like tips, advice to younger people that are in sales roles or whatever it may be, is, take those baby steps 1% better, but also make sure you're in it. Because if you're not 2 feet in, if you're not 100% into what you're doing, then you're not going to grow at the rate you want to grow. You're not going to, knock on the amount of doors you need to knock into. And like I said, like, it's just something for me, like it's unique because it's become kind of personal. Like Bellefontaine.
I love that.
But at the same time, like, there's also professional to it. But I think for me, passionate, I love just walking into a place, and seeing the business owner or whoever it is, the receptionist, and most of the time, 9 times out of 10, what are they thinking? Ugh, solicitor.
Yeah, another sales
I
guy.
wish they would teach sales more in education.
Oh yeah,
Like that was the thing. I know you mentioned that you had a traditional education and went off to college, and it's amazing to me how the skills of sales are not in the nomenclature of a lot of organizations or universities. But for you, like, how do you have a coach? How did you build the accountability and the discipline to walk into a business and hear more likely than not the word no, and still have the courage and energy to go back at it every day?
I think that's the thing too, is like I said, I've been doing what I've been doing for 10 years. Now I've only been on the prospecting, the sales side of the business for just over a year. But before that, I had a lot of experience with walking into maybe sitting down in a meeting with people that weren't that happy with Cintas. And that builds up a lot of ways to negotiate conversations and have tough conversations, and being able to kind of track around that and everything and work to a solution, and then ultimately build that trust into a great relationship with that customer. But, for me, it's, I think the skills that I've kind of acquired and learned is, first off, you really just need to, just not take it personal. Like, you can't walk in somewhere and you get told no, you get told to leave, you get told like, I don't have time for you, get out.
I've heard, I bet you have some stories.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And there's definitely been times where that happens. But when it comes down to it, like, you literally just have to be like, all right, whatever, and then go on to the next one, or learn from it. All right, what could I have done differently? I think the biggest thing is when you walk into these places, is they have to like you within, probably 5 seconds, maybe 10 on a good day, depending on the day of the week. Fridays are always better. Thursdays sometimes are the best. I don't know why.
Thursdays are the magic day.
Yeah.
Listen,
but for some reason or another, like they have to like you when you walk in that door, and you have to explain to them in a little, whatever it be, a pitch, we call them scripts and everything, on why they want to take time, and it isn't just about saving money. And anybody can save you money. Most places can save money just by, calling the provider if they want to. But it has to be a value of some kind.
Some businesses get pigeonholed into being a commodity. how do you risk, not being that? And what do you think you do and the work that your company does to say we're not just like every other commercial laundry vendor?
I think for me, honestly, and because this goes back to, like I said, I was a driver when I started, a service sales rep, as we call them. And I think our frontline partners are our strength. Our service reps are a cut above because they go into these customers with a smile on their face. They're not just delivery. They don't walk in and drop off some uniforms and then walk out the door. They're walking in, they're having conversations, they're talking with the contact after it's all done and saying like, hey, this is what I took care of for you today. Is there anything else you need? Let me know. You can call customer service anytime. For me, that was always kind of the biggest difference. And that's something that I utilize while I'm talking to potential customers. I get to kind of make a different perspective for them, because I'm not, as soon as they hear like, oh, 10 years, you were a driver? You picked up math?
Yeah.
You're wearing a tie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really changes the perspective in the conversation, and saying that our service reps are very well trained. They don't walk in and hand them the keys. That's not how it works. They go through a training process, and in that training process, they have to learn, how to navigate tough conversations, along with, making sure they're building relationships with their customers. And I can attest to the gentleman who I did my route ride with. He's been with Cintas for over 20 years. And I can tell you right now that his customers love him so much that the services that are being provided by Cintas are just they go with each other. Like Rob goes with all these mats. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Rob, we still like the mats, but we're going to keep them.
Yeah.
You better keep Rob. So
Love that.
Awesome. So, kind of thinking about, kind of jumping back to like, the trickle down effect of, development and, how it impacts everybody in the community. And, I don't know, I love hearing your perspective, of Downtown Bellefontaine and seeing the transformation. But, before all of that, there's a mindset shift that has to happen. And, I love hearing what it looks like from you internally inside of a larger brand. But Jason, why don't you share a little bit about some of the resources that we're developing to help other communities do the same?
Yeah, really for the longest time I never imagined that we would be hosting so many different groups of mayors and county commissioners and economic development professionals coming to want to see what's happening here. And a lot of the questions that they ask is, the first one is this really real? And we were hearing from the mayor the other day, he gets calls and just says, hey, I went to Small Nation's website and looking over some of these statistics of how many buildings they've renovated and how many new businesses have been started. Like, just hear from your perspective, is this real? And he, shares, yeah, it's more than real. In fact, you should, contact them and come visit. And so a lot of people take us up on that. But now we're, looking to partners like you and others and saying, how can we package what we have learned and then help other towns that are just like Bellefontaine that are peppered around the country? So I mentioned that small town success formula. That is, really a way that we can take a lot of what we've learned, package it, and take our team to another town where we can do a visit, tour, provide renderings and recommendations and an action plan on what those towns can do. But we also bring a lot of those leaders here for live education, training, and development. And from the live education that we've done, there's been other folks that have reached out and said, man, I would love to come to Ohio, but I live several states away, and sometimes that's just not practical. So we are going to be developing and launching here in the near future some online training and education programs.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share with that, Ethan?
No, I think, we're going to start off with just helping people, get into that mindset, that it's a collective effort and all the different ingredients, to make that happen. And how you can make, that once was a sad story, make that a success story, So I'm really excited for that.
And just a piece of that, when you think it's not just, talking about renovating historic buildings, it could be, and we'd love to have you on, it could be you teaching a course and program on the 7 things that every storefront owner should know that customers and consumers care about. And you'd be amazed, like that's everyday knowledge that you deal with all the time. But there's a lot of businesses that have blind spots. And, I can even share my story of how cheap I was in wanting to buy rugs at Sam's Club. Like that was the earlier version of me. Now I see the value in all those things, and it's having this major impact on the perception that people have on this town.
Yeah, it's fun. That's a great, it just makes me laugh so much just because when it comes down to it, like when people are opening up businesses, I mean, and I know it firsthand when I'm working with a new prospect, they're under construction still,
Yeah.
I know how they have a billion things going on. And the last thing they want is probably to talk to a guy about a mat on the floor that's not even, not even done yet.
Yeah.
Right. Dude, I don't need mats. I need my plumbing to work.
Yeah.
Right.
But the thing is while talking with them and showing them the things that we can take care of for them, and it saves them that greatest asset, time, it becomes very, very, very valuable. The uniqueness of it is those places that do, they buy their things. They go to Sam's Club, they search for the best deal, and they get what they need for their business. And it's just one of those things that's become part of their process, So it's shifting the mindset on, okay, that is part of your process. I get that. Every Wednesday you go to Sam's and you get toilet paper, paper towels, soap. You buy that same mat that's always on sale the same time of year. Mm-hmm. And you get it out there and it works and it seems functional. But here's something that we can take care of for you so you don't have to do that anymore. Wouldn't you rather be home in the evenings than having to go get that stuff for your business? And that's when, we come into play. And Cintas, as I mentioned, it's a very, very, very large company. We're nationwide. Mm-hmm. We have massive customers, and tons of uniform wearers. But our customers that are those small local businesses are equally as valuable as those big customers because,
there's probably a lot more of them statistically.
Tons more.
And those small businesses, usually some of them can grow to be very big businesses.
Yeah. And it's just it's so much fun for me to work with just business owners in general. And I love working with the bigger places as well. I'll never sell that short. I love working with those individuals, but it's so cool to help a small business owner get them what we call ready for their work day and have them at everything they need. And then they open that first day. And I'm always there, come say hi, make sure things are going well. And you can just see, I was like, this is awesome. Sherry was super pumped to be selling truffles to everyone, which I did buy some, and they were really good. But it's just, it's been a joy, and it's been great to see what you guys are doing from this side of it too.
Yeah. You had a fun job, man.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much for just, being on the show with us today. What are some of the professional development resources such as books, podcasts, et cetera, that
from a books perspective, I've read Spin Selling a couple times, and then Good to Great, and that one's a great one.
Collins.
It's been a little while for that one too, but I will say that the biggest that book always sticks out to me because it's good is the enemy of great, and it's just like if there's a more deeper phrase, because I think newer reps, not just with Cintas, whatever profession you're in selling, get stuck in the rut of just being good.
Yeah.
That happens, period, said and done. Whatever your weekly quota is, whatever you're supposed to sell in the month, and then they see that number and they're like, all right, that's where I need to be. Well, that's not good. Mm-hmm. That's what's expected. Great is above that. And I think that's one of the things that really drives me. I know what I'm supposed to do during the week, but I want to do a lot more than that because that's what's going to propel me to the next stage of whatever it is in my career. And I say whatever it is because, like I said, I'm just floating on the raft.
Just floating down the river.
They're just going to have me dock up.
Which we know is not true. Well, here's what I take away. And, again, thank you for being on the show today. I love the idea of that. It's the small steps, but the big vision. Mm-hmm. And I still, you said it several times today, but 2 steps in everything that you do, both feet in.
Everything, not just work.
Yeah.
Life, parenting.
Yeah. And those are hard decisions because every time that you say yes to something else, you're saying no, to something.
The things that already have your attention.
That's right. So, thanks for that reminder today.
Yeah, that was good. And then lastly, where can people follow you and keep up with what's happening with Cintas.
So from Cintas, and you can always just get on the main website.
Yeah.
www.cintas.com.
Can we find you on LinkedIn, I bet?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I see my smiling face, and the picture's a little old. There's not as much.
They always are. Let's be honest.
There's no gray in the hair, unfortunately. It's a little dated. But, and then my email is just my last name, Wisecup, and then a capital C at Cintas.com. And then anybody can reach out to me there. But yeah, very, very happy to be here. This has been a blast. And like I said, great opportunity and awesome to see what everything that's going on in downtown Bellefontaine.
Thanks, Curt.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and checking out the Small Nation podcast. You can find us anywhere that you listen to your podcast, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even the Small Nation YouTube channel. I hope you were able to pull some value from that conversation, and we hope to see you in the next one. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, comment, or a 5-star review to help more people to discover this podcast. If you enjoyed, sorry, we need to automate this, I think.
That's your job.
Anyway, until next time, this is Ethan with the
People get the
Small
point.
Nation podcast signing off. All right. Thanks, everyone.